Couple things to consider when looking at what is transpiring in Iran. As of today, March 11, year of our Lord, 2026, no one knows what the final outcome is going to be. The historians will write in the future the results of what is currently happening now. They will define whether it was successful or unsuccessful based upon the results. I am looking at this from a United States perspective, since they still are the dominant empire on the chessboard. From a United States perspective, here are a few things to consider. Does the cost of waging this conflict outweigh the benefits? That depends how long it lasts and the economic consequences. If this was a Disney movie, in a perfect world, and I'm speaking from a United States perspective, not saying it's good or not saying it's bad. If this was to be the absolute perfect outcome, this war would be short, sweet, and it would somehow alter the current government. We will get to the last issue about the current government near the end of the video. The first question you have to ask yourself if the costs outweigh the benefits. The longer this conflict goes on, the more it's going to benefit Iran and Russia, not the United States. That's because prices are going to continue to go up. I'm not a political scientist, and I'm not really into politics very much. However, as someone who is into economics and data, based on the exit polls of the last election, the main reason they chose the alternative to Harris was because of inflation, because prices were too high. Just naturally, the longer this conflict goes on, the higher prices rise. For this simple point that the Strait of Hormuz, for example, although it's only around 20 to 30 miles wide, a quarter of all oil that is used every single day goes through that region. That's 20 million barrels of oil. Now, a basic principle of economics is supply and demand. When you cut off supply but not demand, it creates a shortage. Right now, we are seeing less oil in the global market, but the demand is staying the same. And this is causing oil prices to go up. As of March 10th, 2026, and that's yesterday, U.S. gas prices have surged, with the national average hitting approximately $3.50 per gallon. This represents a significant increase of over 40 cents from last week and over 60 cents from a month ago. Another reason it will increase prices is because the majority of China's oil, around 75% of it, comes from the Strait of Hormuz. not only China, but other countries in Asia like Laos, Vietnam, they produce the majority of products that U.S. consumers buy. And when it costs more, when less oil is being added every day to the global economy, it increases costs on producers, which in turn is going to increase costs to me and you when we go to the grocery store. In 1973, a geopolitical event thousands of miles overseas did something similar. I'm not going to get into the whole history of it, but essentially, during the Yom Kippur War, the United States helped Israel out. They gave them weapons. The OPEC countries got angry, and they stopped providing oil to the United States and Western countries like Great Britain. This caused a financial catastrophe, oil shortages. Farmers and ranchers and teachers and everyday people would go to the gas station, and when they ran out of oil, they were forced to go back to their homes. The economy was at a standstill because our economy runs on energy. Even products you would not think that use oil, that do not use oil, use oil. Paint, toothpaste, tires, other products that you would not think. Over 50% of all products that we use every day use oil, not only for distribution and production, but it's also in the product itself. Speaking of which, in a constitutional republic where you're supposed to represent the people and you have elections, from a political standpoint, favorability matters. According to the last Quinnipiac poll, half the country opposes any sort of military action, even these military strikes that have been done by the current administration. 74% rather, oppose sending ground troops into Iran now. That is completely impossible. Based on the geography of Iran, and I've looked into it, but up to this point, there's no indication that's going to happen. It's completely impossible. It'll be more disastrous than Napoleon when he tried to invade Russia during the peak of winter. It's impossible for completely different reasons than that. What is it going to look like, though? Changing the government is not the same thing as changing the regime. Trump is a different regime than Biden. But he has the same type of government Biden, Obama, Bush, and his predecessors had. We're seeing this in Iran. Just because you unalive the Ayatollah, you still have the same government. You still have the same system into place. You're just changing the figurehead at the top. In order to get a different government, there's only two ways for this to happen. It would have to be similar to the Arab Spring. We saw all these popular uprisings in all these countries, like Syria, Libya, Egypt, things of that nature. And the popular uprising and protests stoked a civil war. And after the war happened, then the form of government changed. But a big thing you must distinguish from the individuals that were in Libya, for example, the protesters now do not have any firepower. You can't have a change of government or a civil conflict without firepower. All that's going to happen is they're going to be annihilated by the Revolutionary Guard. But what if the Revolutionary Guard has a change of heart, or they don't want to maul down their own citizens? That could change the dynamic. But up to this point, we've not seen massive protest on a grand scale. And even if we do in the future, what's to say the Revolutionary Guard is going to acquiesce to any of their requests? The second way to have a regime change is by occupation. But as I stated, and if they do make the idiotic, stupid idea of invading Iran, I will make a video of why it's going to fail, why it's impossible. I already have that just in case. But I don't think they're going to do that. Because these generals, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, these people in U.S. intelligence know a lot more than I know about this stuff. You would have to occupy it somehow. Then you could change the government. But just because you change the individuals, we've, in my lifetime, went from George Bush Sr. to Bill Clinton to George Bush Jr. to Obama to Trump to Biden back to Trump. We've had the same form of government, just different regimes in place. The best bet is they're going to have some form of negotiation. The Ayatollah right now is in hiding because of what happened to his predecessor, and I don't blame him. If they can form some sort of negotiations to say, okay, we won't be as hostile to the protesters. We won't be as bad as the previous regime. They can make some sort of stipulations. They can make some sort of promises. And both sides come together, and that will be a settled peace. But unless you have massive uprisings where people are able to have firepower, unless you have the Revolutionary Guard turn the other way or they go against the current regime, unless you have an occupation, which, again, invading Iran is impossible. It has desert. The supply lines would be impossible. It's the 17th largest country. You would have to march hundreds of miles into Tehran, and as you're headed that way, you would face massive opposition. And a lot of the mountains and terrain, there's only certain pathways you can walk on. It'd be the equivalent of being in football and lining up in a predictable formation on 4th and 1 and getting stuffed. They would know where you're going to go. There'd be no surprises because of the mountains and the terrain. It would just be a total kerfuffle. It would make Vietnam look like a church picnic. It's not possible, geographically speaking. It's 3 to 4 times bigger than Iraq. It's not possible. And until either of those two things become a possibility, you might change the regime, but you won't change the form of government. And the longer we hold out and continue this, the higher prices are going to go, the less oil is going to be in the economy, the more they're going to charge to produce things. The best course of action is to get Iran to have some form of stipulations. They will not be as harsh as the previous regime was. And you can already see both sides sort of indicating, if you read between the lines, that they are willing to talk with one another. They're willing to speak with one another. I think instead of Iraq 2.0, it's going to be more like the Suez Canal crisis. The Suez Canal crisis lasted 9 days with minimal casualties. The United States under Eisenhower negotiated for it to end, and it's but a footnote in history. Something people thought could lead to another catastrophic war ended up being but a footnote in history. And I think this is probably going to be the result based on all the data we know now, unless, as I stated, occupation or massive uprising with firearms and the guard stands down for whatever reason.